Hey everybody, John Lorden here. Welcome to another edition of Brainscratch Searchlight. We have another special episode for you guys. I heard you loud and clear when I did the interview before for David Gibson Smith and when I spoke to his parents. And I know that you guys want to see more of that type of content. We learned a lot of important things about that case. And this week we are retouching on the case that I covered last week about Kelvin Close. And I know that even when I was covering that, I was telling you guys, I have a lot of inconsistencies here. So Alexis was kind enough to respond to kind of my video message to her. She did agree to come on the show, so we are going to have her speak with us. On top of that, I also reached out to her brother. I spoke to him a few times last week. So I have a bit more information that I'm going to help Alexis with while we're putting this story out there and trying to get the best detail that we can about what's going on with Kelvin and hopefully helping to bring him home. So with all that said, here is Alexis. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, thank you all. I just want to start by saying everybody that watched the video reached out, all the loving messages I got after your first video. I was blown away. And for all of your fans, and especially you, I mean, our family cannot be more appreciative of that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it means a lot to me. I know I kind of said it in last week's video, but I try to be very sensitive when it comes to the families because I don't know if they're really going to, appreciate this type of coverage or not. But thankfully, in every case so far, they have. I feel very fortunate about that. But thank you for agreeing to be here with us and to helping to shed some light on some of the many questions we have about what's going on with your father. And first of all, let me just say, my heart goes out to you. I really appreciate one thing about these very tough interviews for me that I always appreciate is the strength that I see in the people that are going through these situations. And you and your brother are both a very clear example of that. And I feel very fortunate that Zach also talked to me at length and we're working on a few things. I don't know if he's updated you on that stuff, but we'll get to that by the end of this interview as well. So with all that being said, one of the things that was unfortunate about the news coverage was we really didn't get a very good understanding of Kelvin and who he was, what type of person he was. And sometimes that information might help in terms of people that are looking for him, if we know what kind of things he's into and he's going to those types of places or something like that. So I just wanted to start by asking you, can you tell us a little bit about your father? And I know this is really tough. I mean, first of all, we know he's missing. His birthday was last week. We're coming into holidays here. My heart breaks for you guys on so many levels, but please tell us some of the happy memories and some of the good stuff about Kelvin.
Oh, wow. Well, first things first, growing up, he was, he worked so hard. He was loved by all of his employees, all of his coworkers. He worked for a company called Dresser Rand in Painted Post, New York. We're all from New York, actually, from Elmira Corning area, upstate New York. And so we all moved down here, but growing up, he was funny. He loved having people around. He had a couple, his best friends were like my grandparents. They still are, they're obviously devastated about everything. Really, he was more of a friend than a father. I spent my weekends. I wasn't going out in high school. I was hanging out with my dad, and we would wake up. Our tradition is every Sunday morning we would wake up and watch The Sopranos. He loved The Sopranos. We bought him Sopranos cookbook and like an old book about the mob. He loves that stuff. He thinks it's so interesting. Yeah. And so every Sunday morning from high school on, anytime I was in town, because I went away to school for undergrad, anytime we woke up Sunday morning, me and him sat on the couch and watched The Sopranos. He loved the theme song. He actually bought the soundtrack, and I would not be surprised if that CD was in his car today. But yeah, and especially with my brother, him and my brother have been so close, especially because my parents had a divorce, and it was after I was out of the house. I was already in college. And And so even though my brother's not here, my brother really stepped up because my dad was he was pretty devastated when it all happened, and my brother really stepped up and has been there for my dad even when I couldn't be. And
Now you're talking about when he had the accident and fell, right?
well, this was even before that. He was upset about, I mean, obviously him and my mom were married for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So but before that, Zach was there. You know, Zach has really put his life on hold to help my father through that. And then after he was kind of upset about the divorce, that's when this fall happened. So the details with that are difficult because I was in Buffalo, New York, which is about 3 hours away from my dad, and my brother was in Maryland at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So about 3 days after it happened, he had called me and told me about like this awful, awful headache, and I was thinking like, okay, take some Advil. And I convinced him to just go to the hospital because he said he couldn't get rid of it. I get a call from ICU about 20 minutes later that he had been admitted, and he's in ICU. And when we went to see him, I got there probably 2.5 hours later. There was he had a bald head at that point. On the back of his head, there was a spider web. That's how bad the brain bleed was. But since it had already been probably 3 days since it happened,
right.
They didn't want to drain it. So, I mean, he was just awful. For a week, we couldn't even visit him in the hospital because any noise would upset him that much.
It's a real unfortunate thing. Zach told me a little bit about the fall. I guess your father was walking a dog, I think, just going outside.
Yeah. In our yard in New York, we really didn't need leashes. We had land. So if he was on a leash, the story has varied from my father is the problem. Because he told me he was shoveling and slipped and fell.
Okay.
And told my mom he was in the garage smoking a cigarette and slipped and fell. And then he told Zach something else. So we haven't nailed down to this day we know he fell. And we know he hit his head on the concrete.
And then he waited a couple days before he got help, which exactly. is kind of traumatic too. And Zach mentioned it's a subdermal hematoma that he actually got. Okay.
Yeah. So after that, we all we really that kind of brought our family closer together. Zach and my dad moved back in together, and then everybody moved down here to Florida because I had gotten a job down here, and I mean. Compared to New York and Florida, the weather's a lot better.
And it's interesting because your parents separated in New York.
Yes.
But then everyone moves down to Florida, kind of in the same area?
My dad lives about 5 minutes from where my mom lives.
That's really interesting.
That's how close our family is.
Yeah.
Still do holidays together, especially this coming holiday is going to be really tough.
Yeah.
Actually, I just do want to mention, yesterday was to the 2-month anniversary since Kelvin went missing.
Yeah.
So it's been rough, and it's definitely starting to hit us more now. But I mean, he was just like a best friend, you know. He made you laugh, and I mean, when this injury happened, it did go downhill, and a lot of conversations were about. Like they were repeat conversations. They were stuff that you've already told him about, and he's asking you like he'll call you one day and you'll talk to him, and then 2 days later he'll call you and completely forget the conversation, and you got to do the whole thing over again. You're
describing exactly what Zach told me. And by the way, just so everyone knows, I did invite Zach onto this. He is extremely camera shy. He's not the type of person to do that, and kind of an amazing thing. Him and his sister are splitting up the duties of trying to find their father. And essentially his sister is working the press and keeping the awareness up. Zach is trying to escalate with the sheriff's departments, trying to pull in all the help that he can on this. He's really working hard. Zach actually lived with his father, right? For the past, how long?
4 years, probably. My brother put his life on hold for my dad.
Yeah. And Zach describes Kelvin the exact same way. He says he was literally his best friend. They would watch TV together every night. He also describes the forgetfulness in a very similar way to what you're saying, where he would have a conversation with his dad one day and literally the next day they would have the exact same conversation and his father wouldn't remember that it happened. So pretty traumatic, tough to deal with, that type of stuff. That's really a heartbreaker already in its own. And then we get into this disappearance here, which is very unfortunate.
Yes, yes.
What type of work did he do? I'm just curious.
He was the manager of planning and scheduling for, it kind of varied. So sometimes it was for the East Coast, and then I believe he took a demotion kind of situation where he was more managing just the plant itself.
Okay.
But he was, I mean, that it had a lot to do with math, organization, things like that.
Sure.
And another thing that was drastically changed is at work he would be on the computer, do spreadsheets, the whole nine, and then a couple weeks ago he couldn't even set up his voicemail. Right, the 2 or 3 days before he went missing, he was having trouble setting up his voicemail on a cell phone.
Wow, and he was a real technical person before that. So
I mean, not necessarily. I wouldn't say really technical, but he knew how to use a computer. He knew how to do all of this stuff that now all of a sudden he couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, we were all frustrated. Like, we know you know how to do this. Stop this, you know?
Right.
And that's why, I mean, of course, we're all feeling guilty now. We should have forced him to get more medical attention, but I mean, hindsight's 2020, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Was he still getting help for those particular problems? Like this?
He was regularly visiting his doctors, but from what I can tell, because I'm in Orlando now, I'm not actually in Fort Myers, so I'm not available to go to the doctor's appointments with him.
Right.
But from what I understood is he wasn't being honest with them. And we were still under the impression that he was capable to go on his own and that he would relay the necessary information. And we obviously, that wasn't a good idea. But the day he actually went missing, he was going to his therapist. So, yeah.
Was that to pick up medication? Zach had mentioned something about a medication pickup. Is that how you understand it?
Yeah, so he had a prescription. I believe it was for Xanax or something like that.
Okay.
But you have to go and meet with your doctor monthly before you get these, because I mean it's a serious drug. So he was going to. It was probably going to be a 15, 20-minute meeting just to kind of check in, make sure the medicine was working correctly.
Right.
But yeah, that's the doctor that he was going to. And he had been there before. My dentist is actually there. He drove me to that dentist right there. And I will say it is a tricky exit, because it's actually like you're not getting off the road, but the way the road's set up, there's 3 lanes, 2 of which go up, 1 goes down.
Okay.
And if you want to turn, you have to go on the down. But the street's continuing over the bridge, so it could have easily stayed going over the bridge instead of going and veering on this little side street.
Okay.
And it had been a problem before when we first moved down here, but we talked to him, we explained it, and then I rode with him because he had to take me to the dentist. So I know that but then again, that was a couple months beforehand. He could have easily forgotten in the time between doctor's appointments.
Yeah, and especially if he was having problems that were getting worse. I did have a comment from a viewer that was talking about, I think he said that he was only 41, but he was in a coma a little while ago, and he wound up, like he was driving to work and he just blanked. He just couldn't even remember how to get to work. And it was a drive he had done hundreds of times before. So certainly if your father was dealing with these issues and they were getting worse and worse, it seems like it's understandable that he might have gotten initially lost while he was driving there.
Also, my father is from Elmira, New York. He's lived in one area his whole life.
Right.
And although we did visit Fort Myers, where he is now, multiple times growing up, my mom's father lived there. So we were there twice a year. But it's not, growing up 60 years in one place, there's no way he could have ever gotten lost in New York, because it doesn't matter if the streets' names change. They're not, you know how to get there, you know?
Yeah.
And so that, I feel like he could have easily gotten confused because of what's going on in his mind, and none of the streets are looking the way that he's used to. So if something like that did happen, he would be probably flustered.
Yeah.
Another major thing that we worry about is how nice he is. He is the most friendly person you will ever meet. He's the type of person that strikes up conversations in the grocery line, that makes cashiers laugh, that will make the guys carrying your groceries to your car laugh. Actually, we have a neighborhood market. Our dog ran in the market one day, and nobody was even mad. Everybody's just laughing because they knew my dad. And it's a pit bull, so you know the stigma about them, but they're the sweetest dogs in the world.
Yeah.
So the dog's running through this supermarket in New York, and my dad finally gets him in the car, goes to open the front door, the dog runs out again and does it again. So I mean, there's countless stories of this, you know. I mean, he's a great guy. He really is, you know. He's something else.
He sounds like a great character. Hopefully, I hope someday maybe I'll get to meet him or speak to him in some way.
I'll knock your ear off, I'm sure.
Yeah, that'd be the best. I would be happy for that to happen. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into a couple of points of clarification. First of all, where he actually lived. I know it was reported in one paper as being Horizons Apartments. It was reported in another as being Palms of Monterey Apartments.
It's the Palms of Monterey.
Okay.
That's it's the name of the street is Sonoma Drive, but the apartment complex is the Palms of Monterey. So that's, I think, where the confusion came from. Yeah. So it's the Palms of Monterey. So it was the dot on your map that was further south.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah, and then the car also. The car is champagne color, not the darker gold that you had thought originally. Okay,
yeah, that is a very important clarification for anyone out there that is in the area that might be looking for him. It is the champagne kind of lighter beigey gold color. It is not the darker, more vibrant mandarin gold. And let me just put a message out there to Zach, because when we talked about this, I could tell he was really upset. He kept blaming himself because he is the one that started the missing persons report, and he initially said that it was gold, and he didn't realize that there was the two different colors. Zach, you were going through so much, man. Give yourself a break. Don't worry about it. You know, people are looking, and if there's anything close to gold, they're going to be reporting it. So, but now we do know that it is more of the champagne color. Also, another thing Zach mentioned was his father was very proud of this car, and he mentioned specifically that he got a dark brown leather interior for this car. So another detail about it for people.
It's going to be, it's not the stock. The car is going to look different. It's not going to look like every Altima, or I'm sorry, Altima, I drive an Altima. Accord that you see. It's got it, especially in Florida. A lot of people in Florida have tints. This car has no tints on it. So there's not even the back windows, nothing. You're going to be able to see right in, and you're going to be able to see that unique rust colored seats. And that's another thing that's going to make it stand out when people see it, because it's going to be dark inside instead of the light, more traditional I don't know, brownish color. Okay. So that's another key distinction to kind of make it stand out a little bit more.
Yeah. Now, has anything else been floating out in the media, even in terms of the video that I did, that was incorrect that you want to help clarify?
I can basically kind of clarify the events of the day. I feel like there's a lot of confusion about what actually happened and how he ended up where he ended up, and I can kind of go through that. So just so I don't know, I don't think it was really unclear, but I do think that a couple of reports had some facts kind of mixed up. So I can go through the that just so everybody knows exactly kind of what happened and how he ended up where he ended up.
Yeah, let's step through it. I've got kind of a series of questions that I think is going to mold us and kind of get us going that direction too. So just fill in the blanks for us as we're going here. So Zach did tell me that it's typically a pretty short drive, like maybe a 7-minute drive from where he was living to this doctor.
It could have been 3 if he didn't hit any lights. That's how close it was. I mean, I would say maybe 2 street lights between him and the place that he was going.
Okay. And Zach also did mention that he used your father's cell phone and pulled up a Google map, and it had basically driving directions for him to get to the doctors.
Yeah, because this area was so tricky for him, Zach made sure that he put it in his phone so that he can just listen to the directions. And even though we knew he'd been there before, we didn't want this to happen. So I'll put it in your GPS. And then, I mean, he would have even shown him how to like hit the return button to get him back.
Right.
So yeah, Zach made sure that was all in his phone. before he left the house, and it was Zach's birthday. So there is a reason Zach didn't go to the doctors with him that morning. It wasn't Zach being lazy. It was they had plans for dinner at my mom's later, and Zach was at the house with the dog while Dad went to the doctor's appointment. But yes.
That is just another tough part of this that I didn't even know about. It was Zach's birthday that all this happened. And yeah, Zach he's really feeling it. He really wishes that he, of course, would have driven your father in hindsight. He did drive your father around a little bit, but your father was still able to get around, and he had his car that he was very proud of and wanted to drive it, right?
Yeah. And I mean, my dad, if somebody was with him, of course, he'll let whoever's with him drive. But that's because he liked being chauffeured. He would say it. He'd actually sit in the back sometimes and say, and he'd call you like James or something, some silly name from a movie. He would call me Mario Andretti because he says that I have a lead foot, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, he wouldn't go necessarily out for long periods of time, but he'd go to the grocery store on his own. He would go to the Ruby Tuesdays right down the street from his house, and Zach's not a really, really out there social person, but my dad is. So my dad would go and sit at the bar, have a drink, and talk to some of the waitresses. He made some friends down there. He would come whenever I came to town. He'd drive over and see me at my mom's. Basically, unless like Zach and Dad had something to do together, we never really thought a big deal of him driving. I mean, if it was a far distance, that's one thing. But if it's, right around the corner or something, I mean, it wouldn't have even crossed our minds, especially that morning. Zach, yeah. I guarantee Zach was sitting there like, we're going to go out later. I'm just going to hang out this morning,
Right.
And wouldn't ever put any thought into it that he's not going to be able to make it around the corner.
Yeah. So do we know he left at about 11:30 in the morning, but do we know, did he actually make it to his doctor's appointment?
No. So actually, he didn't make it to the doctor's appointment. We all were under the impression that he was at the doctor's appointments, but he called us 40 minutes later from Naples.
Okay.
And when he was called from Naples, he didn't give any distinct landmarks or anything. He's not familiar with the area. He just said that he was in a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
So then my mom, because he was calling my mom and my brother, she directed him to I-75 going north. And she told him to get off at the Daniels exit.
Right.
And so, but then he had also, after that, talked to my brother, and my brother told him the actual number of the exit that he needed to get off at, which was 131.
Right.
So about another probably 45 minutes goes by, and he calls again, and he's at exit 141.
Okay.
So that's where originally before we got all the cell phone information, we were thinking that's the LaBelle exit. Mm-hmm. So that's why we originally thought that's the exit that he had gotten lost at. So when this first happens, I drove up and down that road at, I don't know, probably a half hour each way, asking, showing pictures, and nobody had seen him. About a week later, we get the information from the police that his cell phone was actually last pinged before it died at Tucker's Grade, which is probably 2 to 3 exits, but also probably 15 to 20 minutes because the exits aren't very close together.
Okay.
So it's probably another 15, 20 minutes before his phone died. And the information from that cell phone ping gave us basically a picture of him getting on and getting off the exit, going in both directions. And like he was just driving around that Tucker's Grade exit.
Okay.
And that's the end. That's our leads. So search-wise, what we've done, we went to that exit. We had the Q Center helping us, and they had some canine units out. And we went, and that whole nature preserve, you can see it kind of on the maps. It's a big nature preserve off to the right.
Yeah. That
was all searched, as well as me and my brother went the opposite direction and peppered all the businesses with any flyers, anybody that would let us hang flyers, we did. And then also we had the Charlotte County Police Department a couple weeks ago fly over the area in Charlotte County. Mm-hmm. And that also was a fruitless effort, unfortunately. I'm trying to think of what else. Since then we really have had we've had no leads, no contacts, no credit card, no cell phone activity. Nobody's seen the car. I've called actually down to the police department in the Florida Keys, and we know that his plates haven't gone that far south. So his car hasn't made it into the Keys. Regardless, I mean, I don't know. He could have easily went to Miami. I don't know, but I don't see him turning around going back south without finding Fort Myers. I think if anything, he was going north if he continued to be lost on 75.
Right. And from what Zach said, police have also set up some type of search on their traffic cameras. So it's doing license plate scanning, looking for his car. And we have had no hits on that either.
Yeah, and I was actually just talking to our representative from the Q Center, who also helps us. She's kind of a liaison between us and the sheriff's department, just because they deal with these kind of things, and they've been really great. I was just talking to her actually last night, and the police and the Q Center, everybody's baffled because where's the car?
Yes.
Everybody can understand, all right, Kelvin might be missing, but that's our problem, is that we don't have a starting point because we don't have the car.
Right.
And there's really, I mean, with all of they're running another, I believe it's another basically cell phone search to like an offline search to try and see. Basically, they're running all of his information again. Anything that they can run his information through, they're going to run it through one more time and see if anything pops up. So in a couple days, we should know if if his plates have been tagged, if we didn't get like a notification, because there should have been a notification. But just in case, we're going to cover our basis and go back through that.
Right. And
then there was also an airboat that went into Webb Lake to search, and there was nothing in the lake that looked like a vehicle. Okay. So, I mean, at this point, the problem is really we have no starting point. Everybody's driven around. It doesn't look like there was an area. I know you had mentioned maybe going off the road, or if there's the water. It was 2 days after Hurricane Katrina, or not Katrina, Irma.
Irma, yeah.
Yeah. So there was high water, and there still is high water. But the thing about that is, even driving around, you don't see tread marks. You don't see fences down. You didn't see anything to indicate that somebody went off the road. Not even skin marks on 75 next to a viaduct there's just nothing that would indicate somebody went off the road, and especially broad daylight. Yeah. One thing, it was difficult because the cell phone information we weren't actually able to get for a couple of weeks because of the tower actually got toppled in the hurricane.
Wow.
Used. So that took a couple days even to get that information. And then with news and everything, for the first month, nobody would pick up the story. They said they don't do it. So the first news story we got, the first media attention was a month after he had been gone. Yeah. So people didn't even know when he was in the area to be looking for him.
Yeah, that's really terrible. And especially for a silver alert, you think that that'd be enough. I mean, the alert systems, in terms of amber alerts, at least, I mean, it literally triggers a bunch of signs, on freeways and stuff like that. I don't know why the silver alert wouldn't be important enough for media to just do, even if it was just, a few seconds of coverage, a picture of his face, and, in this particular area, these particular local broadcasts, show this for a few seconds on their newscast. I really can't believe why you didn't get that help.
Well, and also I drove, he went missing on Wednesday. I drove down Friday, and there were supposed to be signs with his silver alert information. I drove from Orlando down I-4 and then from Tampa down to 75. I didn't see a single sign about my father. Wow. But I talked to the sheriff, and supposedly they fixed it. I did have one person say that they saw it. Other than that, I really don't know. But that's really why I'm just trying to go at it myself. And, I understand, and I absolutely would never blame the police department or the news. I mean, other people have other things going on. It's just, what would you expect if it happened to you is all I have to say about that.
Yeah. I did want to touch a little bit on, when I spoke to Zach, and he talked about the fact that they called the sheriffs at about 5 or 6 in the evening from your mother's place, and They did have someone respond that came over and kind of listened to their story. Zach didn't feel like they were taking him very seriously. And they wouldn't fill out the report at that point at all. I think they even cited this, and I'm going to just mention it. It comes up on my channel all the time, but just so everyone out there knows, there is no official policy about you having to wait 24 hours. That is made up in TV shows. It doesn't really exist, but for some reason, a lot of people that respond cite that policy. If you hear about that policy, ask to speak to their superiors and keep going up the chain until you get to someone who knows what they're talking about and get that report filed. Unfortunately, Zach wound up waiting, as he was instructed to by them, till the next morning. A different officer comes out at that point and responds and takes it a little bit more seriously, but still even questions, I don't think I can really file this report, and has to speak to her supervisor. And then thankfully her supervisor said, hey, you know, we just had this hurricane here and we've got this elderly gentleman missing. Yes, let's file this report and let's start looking for him. So thankfully the right thing happens, but you're talking, 12, 14 hours later, and what could have been done in that time in between, I don't know.
And I mean, even trying to get the news stations, I couldn't get the sheriffs to reissue the press release to get the news stations to do the story right away.
Oh, wow.
So that was another issue because I had 2 news stations the morning I got there ready to do a story. They needed the police to just reissue a press release, and they wouldn't. So
did they give you any reason why they wouldn't?
Apparently the detective wasn't working that day or something to that effect. And nothing, basically I got shuffled around, and they said that it had been issued on the day you went missing, and they're not issuing another one until it gets reassessed in a week or something like that. It was excuse my language, but BS,
Yeah.
That's when I get shipped around from person to person, and then somebody just gets you off the phone, is how I felt at the end of that. But I mean, at this point, I'm not here to assign blame. I just want to find him. I don't care. I don't care the circumstances. I just want to find him. I just want somebody to care enough to keep their eyes open, to share these pictures and this post and these videos. And I mean, that's all I want. That's all I care about, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just unfortunate because we look to these people for help, and we're in a dire position of need. And when you bump into issues like that and you get knocked around in the process, it feels very impersonal and it feels very cold. And it's an unfortunate aspect to these cases, but unfortunately I hear about it kind of frequently.
Yeah.
But they did get the silver alert out. Did they ever issue another press release? Like they were saying that they were going to reevaluate and then issue? It never happened, right? Okay.
No. The Q Center, our liaison, Stephanie, she's going to try to get them to issue another one kind of around the holidays to do a story on that. But that's kind of up in the air. She had just mentioned that. I'm not sure if that's even going to be a real thing. I do know that Fox 4 in the area has been the news anchor that originally did my story. She's been a sweetheart, and she didn't know about it, the month before it happened. But as soon as she found out about it, she jumped right on it, and she still messaged me daily and asked me if I have any information or anything, because she doesn't want the story to die. The sad thing is I just don't have any information. So, you can't run the same story night and night and night again,
Yeah.
So we find something or have something to kind of get everybody back up in arms. It's we're just at a standstill.
Well, one thing that might help with that is if you guys did consider doing some vigil of some kind. Have you spoken about that at all yet?
I was reading the information you have on your website about families of missing persons, and I saw that and I was thinking, his birthday would have been a great opportunity, but maybe we could try something around Christmas. Considering I'm in law school, I really don't have free time. Mm-hmm. So we'd probably wait till I have like a break, maybe a summer break or winter break. But another thing is we don't really know that many people in Fort Myers, so we don't even know. aside from the few people that we know, we don't even know how to really get that all put together, organized so that we can get people there.
Yeah, and it does help. Like, I don't know if he had any affiliations with any clubs or, churches or things like that. I mean, if he did, those would be kind of good for getting some people together. But I can tell you that I've seen news coverage on very small vigils, like where literally maybe 10, 12 people show up.
Okay.
The news just likes to cover those types of events because it's heart touching, and that's the kind of stuff that they like to get out to the public. So you might want to consider it, even if you needed to fly in friends or family, possibly from New York. I really noticed on the video in the responses, and I've heard from some people that knew him from New York as well. There are a lot of people that care about Kelvin, and hopefully a few of them would be able to do something like that, maybe fly down.
I mean, if you really, I knew my dad was very, very well loved at work, but I mean, especially his coworkers, the love that they have for him, and considering that he was their boss, and I remember on a Bring Your Daughter to Work day, I was down on the factory floor, and the factory where, I mean, my dad was management, and so, but he was still down on the factory floor and talking to everybody. And one of his coworkers had posted on our Facebook page that he would always have time for the little people when he would go and have lunch with them. And that's my dad. I cannot think of a single person that didn't love my dad. I really cannot think of a single person that he has met in his life that didn't say, "Oh my God, your dad's so cool." I mean, from my friends to my brother's friends to significant others. I mean, he is all about being a nice guy, and he'd do anything to get somebody to laugh. That's really what it is. He should have been a comedian.
Well, I'm sure that just based on what you told me right now, you'd probably be very surprised if you actually put the word out that you were going to do an event at how many of those people would show up. Because I know in my life, people that light me up in that way that you're talking about are certainly very important to me, and I would go to great lengths for them. So. Yeah, if I was you, I'd start planning earlier the better. If it's going to be your summer break.
Yeah, especially maybe I think summer would be best, because then the people from New York could actually plan. And I know they run sales on tickets and stuff for different airlines at different times of the year. So that's something I'm definitely going to have to get into.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
You got it. Now, I was just curious. I assume that you guys have been calling like local hospitals.
Yes.
And shelters possibly?
Well, I tried kind of. The thing with shelters and mental health is they're not actually allowed to tell you who's there.
Oh.
So it gets really difficult when you're trying to get information, especially like if he was in a mental health facility, they wouldn't tell you anything.
Right.
So we do hospitals. Usually it's kind of a get the people off the phone kind of thing, but they check their systems. We've called from Naples all the way up to Tampa, which is probably a 4-hour, distance. I mean, if anything that we could think before that we think, and we went inland a little bit too, to some of the more inland counties that he could have gotten lost in, because as soon as you get off 75 on the right side, it's all farmland. There's just so much uninhabited land. And the other side on the waterfront side, it's completely populated. Okay. So it's a completely different world depending on which side of the highway you're on. And if you got lost on the one highway, really without a helicopter, a plane, or something, it's impossible to search the area. There's just way too much land. Okay.
Now you mentioned that, or we've also heard in the coverage that he might have had a bit of a significant amount of cash on him. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So because of the hurricane, everybody was worried the ATMs weren't going to work. So he took out, I believe it was almost $900.
Okay.
And because they lost power, I think, for only maybe like a day or day and a half. So they ended up not needing the cash, but since it was just a day or two afterwards, he still had it on him, as well as he has a Rolex watch. That's another key. It's going to be a gold band with a black face. And that was his prized possession. It was an anniversary gift from my mother. But so that probably made him stand out. The new car made him stand out. The wallet full of money and credit cards made him stand out. Mm-hmm. But also, none of the credit cards have been used. So that's another key thing, is that $900 can only last so long. So we're kind of thinking, I mean, if he was out somewhere, he'd eventually have to dip into his accounts. Yeah. And they're all being monitored. So
yeah, and I don't know how realistic it is to think that, you know, he's gone on his own accord or of his own decision. I mean, why would he have called you guys and talked about the fact that he was lost? And you know, you're making great points. $900 is only going to get you so far, and we're talking 2 months into this. He probably would have had to dip into something. Worth noting, the serial number for the Rolex was turned over to the authorities as well, right? Yeah. So they have exacting information on that, and that way they can keep tabs on that in case that watch happens to pop up somewhere.
Yeah. Another thing that I've called some salvage yards, junk yards, because if somebody stole my dad's car, maybe they couldn't sell it to a dealership, but maybe they could try and sell it for parts or something like that. Tow companies I've called. Basically any business with a vehicle that intakes vehicles in some way, shape, or form in that area, we've called. That's something my brother's really helped me with. I'll find the information, come up with the crackpot idea of, let's call all the tow companies, and then I just send him the numbers, and he sits there and calls. Yeah. You know, I mean, what else? At this point, that's how we keep going. We have each other first and foremost, and we just keep coming up with whatever idea you can, and go from there.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you're looking in that direction. I know it's hard because you don't want to think the worst, and I've seen quotes from you talking about this, but we have to assume that he didn't wind up with a good Samaritan in some way, because they would have identified him. And I mean, just do a Google search on the guy's name. You're going to find information on him at this point. Yeah. So we have to assume that something else has happened here. So it's good to hear that you're kind of reaching into those dark areas a little bit and figuring out how to check those out and hopefully close some of those leads out.
I hope nothing happened to him. I want to know either way. You know, I'm not gonna restrict my search to only places that a live person would be. We'd actually we're trying to get some people to start using Sonar in the lakes near, or the little retention ponds, the high water from. I mean, in my heart, I'm not going to say that he's gone until I know for sure. But I'm not going to not explore those options. I still need to be a rational human being and do what needs to be done, because I'd rather have closure than have unknown.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I did get some questions. I asked some of my Twitter followers. I told them that I was going to be interviewing you, and I've got a couple questions for you from them. Brunette Coffee sent the first one. You stated that Kelvin was sometimes confused after his illness a while back. Was he exhibiting any other signs of dementia, such as sundowning or short-term memory loss? Have they checked locations, areas near where he may have lived in the past, consistent with long-term memories? I think that's a interesting thought.
Yeah, actually, since I do have so many friends in New York, a few of them they've driven back to our old house. The people that actually bought our house are family friends. So, I mean, they'd obviously know him if he showed up at their door. And that's one great thing about our community. It's not a big town. As soon as it was on Facebook, I doubt anybody in that area doesn't know to keep an eye out for him. That's
awesome.
Yeah, and other than that, he hasn't lived anywhere in the South. He's literally only lived in upstate New York, in Elmira, and here. So There are people that are keeping an eye out. There are people that have actually gone out and driven around and just made sure that that there isn't anything to indicate, even out in Corning and at his old job. A lot of people still work there. He'd stand out like a sore thumb in Elmira. We know that everybody that we come into contact with there, everybody's looking up there. The real thing is, since we are so new to the area, I'm still hearing about people in Fort Myers that don't know he's missing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what's upsetting to me, is that how are we supposed to look if people in the area still have no idea that he's missing and no idea that they're supposed to be looking? So that's really like the trouble, at least for me, is he really hasn't shown any other signs. He's had some memory loss, the short-term memory loss. I'm not sure what the other son. I'm not sure what that one really is.
Yeah, I'm not positive either.
I'm not really sure what that is, so I can't comment. But yeah, the short-term memory, definitely. His long-term memory is pretty intact still. He'll still tell you his old stories from back. I mean, he'll tell you the same old stories that he's been telling you for 15 years, and he'll tell them over and over and over and over again. They're never going out of his memory.
Yeah, some people might accuse me of doing the same thing, so...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Ben Salmon asks, was Kelvin at any point an outdoorsman or interested in camping, hiking? He's a New Yorker, right? City guy.
The worst part of his life was when we had to pick up the leaves from our front yard. That's about as outdoorsy as he got. When his father was alive, his father was really big into hiking. And a couple times when my brother and I were younger, kind of to indulge us, he did it. Other than that, no.
Okay.
He would not. They wouldn't even come up to my apartment for the hurricane because they didn't have adequate space and they didn't want to be without TV. Okay. So he's the furthest from an outdoorsman as I could think of.
Gotcha. Now, Ben does continue here and raises a bit of an interesting point. Are there any areas possibly in or out of the state where he had previously spent time, and if he had some type of psychological break that he might have kind of homed in on, like any vacation spots or special memory places that you can think of?
Let me think. Well, I mean, from my life, since I was born, our vacations consisted of going to Fort Myers to visit my grandfather, going to Canada to visit family, friends. And other than that, he really didn't travel a lot because he was very dedicated to his work. He really, I remember one work trip to Oklahoma, but he didn't enjoy it, so I don't think he would go back.
Okay. You might want to give that some more thought. Just if he was really in a different headspace, is there some particular place, where your parents might have gotten married or might have honeymooned or something along those lines that he would reach out to?
But that's definitely something good to think about. I wasn't even thinking. That's great. Yeah. He could definitely have thought of Skinny Atlas.
Tanya M. Marshall asks, does his car have OnStar or something that can track it?
His car, from what we've heard from Honda, they are equipped. They have the technology there. It is up to the dealer to turn that technology on. The dealer that he bought his car from did not.
Okay.
So there's no OnStar, and he did not pay for any navigation or anything in the car. So his car itself is not going to give us any more information, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I even asked Zach about potentially any insurance devices. Now they have things you plug into your car to kind of track how you're driving, but unfortunately nothing like that. Cheryl, I believe I don't know if it's LT or IT. This printout's kind of fuzzy, but Cheryl talks to me all the time on Twitter. Hey, Cheryl. She's saying that, and I think she's echoing a lot of what we've talked about. I have an awful feeling that this vehicle is in a body of water. We've got the phone off. We've got no activity on the credit cards. When and where was his last fuel stop? Do you guys know when he gassed up last?
My brother filled his gas tank in the morning. He went missing.
Okay.
He went missing with the gas.
Okay, so he had a full tank of gas, and she's basically saying, you know, figure out the miles per gallon on the car, and then that might show you how far he could have possibly gone. But then we also know that he had $900 in cash, so he could have refilled and actually gone farther. But that might help if you start considering at least a perimeter.
He is a very credit card conscious person. He's going to use, for stuff like that, he'd use his credit card. He's ideally, like, if he was still here, he'd put the cash back in the bank. Right. He would only use his credit card. But yeah, that is definitely an option. And we are working with the Q Center to hopefully get some boats or divers in the water around there somewhere to try and see. That's basically where we're focusing now, because I mean we've searched the land in the area. It's time to start looking in the water.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when you consider, you know, the cell phone signal thing is interesting because the battery could have run out, but the car missing on top of that, I have seen other cases, I mentioned this in the video, where, you know, the car is found in a body of water. So I think it makes sense to certainly try to pursue that. Wendy LC is curious. First of all, was he taking any new medications at all, or were these medications he had been taking for a while?
No, there was no new medication. And he was actually, he hadn't had that Xanax that I was talking about. He had ran out the day before, so he hadn't actually had any medication that day that he went missing. So, I mean, I don't know how much you know about Xanax. Really, the only real effect that would have on him is he'd be a little bit anxious. But hopefully it had enough built up in his system that it really wouldn't affect him. That's why he was going to the doctor.
That's an actually really interesting point. You know, Zach told me that when he last spoke to your father, he definitely got that your father was frustrated with the fact that he was lost. And considering that he was, you know, missing Xanax for a day, maybe that would have kind of heightened his amount of frustration a little bit. So definitely a good consideration there. Wendy LC was also asking, and I'm just kind of curious also, was there another woman in his life at all, or was he just kind of?
Yeah, he was still kind of in love with my mom. He is still very much in love with my mom. But he did have a friend. Her name is Katie. She actually, one of our pictures on our on the page, I cropped her out just because it was just such a great smile of my dad. Yeah. But she actually lives right above them. That's a buddy of his. But there weren't any other women that he was really interested in. He still was pretty caught up on my mom. Yeah. I mean, they've been married for 25 years, so it wasn't something that was easily going to get changed. And it wasn't that. I mean, it was only a couple years old still too. So gotcha. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, and
of course, not either. So.
Yeah. Wendy also says that, of course, her heart goes out to the family, and I've heard it from many of the viewers. Everyone really is touched by this story and feels for you guys. So at this point, where do we go from here? And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an update. I'm sure Alexis probably knows most of this already, but first of all, I did what I promised, and I got him entered into NamUs. Unfortunately, there's a little goof with his age. It's showing that when he went missing, he was 66, but it's saying he's currently 62. I've sent them an email to try to fix that. It was my bad. I put in his birthday wrong, and then there was no way to correct it once I submitted it. But he is on NamUs, and it's active. They've already done their research. They've gotten the detective's name has been updated on there as well. So he's active. There's a picture. It's the profile, I think, is at medium right now. I'm sure they're going to continue processing it and try to reach out for, potentially DNA, fingerprints, dental records, all that kind of good stuff.
Have his dental records. Right when he went missing, we got on the phone and got our dentist up in New York to get them down to the police as soon as we can. So that's one thing at least the police already have. And the DNA, the same. We're close enough. We're willing to do that. It's just a matter of somebody asking.
Yeah, no one has asked for anything in terms of DNA yet?
No. No.
You might want to contact Zach, or Zach, if you're watching this, grab his toothbrush and grab his hairbrush and get those into plastic bags.
Okay.
like Ziplocs. Get those things saved, because at some point someone should ask for that. Hopefully, with it being in NamUs, they'll kind of prompt the law enforcement to ask for that, but we'll see.
I'm giving him a call after I'm done with this. He wants to hear all about it, so I'll let him.
Excellent. And, tell him I said hi. I feel so bad for that guy. I wish I could. That's one of the frustrating things about doing these interviews. I wish I could give you guys hugs that having to do them remotely, but
then the tears start coming. So
yeah.
I can keep my composure. It's when I start getting the hugs, but that's when the waterworks come.
I also did reach out to Team Water's Sonar, and I've talked about them on the channel before. It is a husband and wife team, Dennis and Tammy. They work for free. They do sonar searches. They drive all over the country. And take out their boat. They have some good equipment. They actually let me know, which I think you had already talked about earlier, that Webb Lake has been searched by someone. They did say that their equipment is probably different than the type of search that happened with that person. So they were still asking me. I'm sorry?
I was told that sonar machine that they were using was extremely old in the Webb search, Webb Lake search.
Yeah, and I'm kind of concerned because of where Tucker's Grade is, and of course, if you look to the right, you have Webb Lake, and you were talking about how populated it is to the west of I-75, and of course, that lake is on the east. You have it a number of days after Hurricane Irma. So even though it looks like a spot where there's usually some campers and, recreation stuff going on, I doubt it was probably being used only a few days after Hurricane Irma in that way.
Most of that area was without gas and power still. When we came down that weekend to start our search, it was still, you couldn't really, it was still very hard to get gas in the Fort Myers area, but especially in those rural areas. Just driving around, it was not a pretty sight, that's for sure. And Southwest Florida got hit pretty hard. Orlando got hit hard too, but they went without a lot for a long time, especially when all of this was going on. So the police resources were very limited for this case.
Yeah. So, and something else I did was I went to, Google Street View, and I kind of looked at that exit, the Tucker's Grade exit. Mm-hmm. If he did get off there, which I was putting this whole theory together because when I spoke to Zach told me that he had spoken to your father fairly close to when that last ping happens. Mm-hmm. Now, he didn't have the exact times, but he felt like it was pretty close in that 2:40 time range when the ping happened. He had told your father to get off and to turn around because he was going too far north. And if you get off that exit and it kind of forces you right, you're heading right towards Webb Lake. And if you're looking for a spot to turn around, there are several private driveways that are gated off. And the first thing you can turn on is actually the frontage road that leads to Webb Lake and to the boat launch area. And if you continue down that road, there is a very hard 90-degree right turn that happens eventually down at that lake. And it looks like there are some opportunities there for someone to have an accident with their vehicle and that lake. So I was really trying to encourage Dennis and Tammy to look into it more. They are. They wanted to also get the cell phone dump information because apparently there are some ways where they can tell if the phone was turned off versus if it had been destroyed based on the ping information.
Okay.
So
definitely. If you want to just send me their contact information, I can reach out. I'll probably send it to Zach, and then he'll reach out to get them the information from the detective herself when she gets back in on Monday.
We're already a little bit ahead of you because I did contact Zach. Zach did talk to the detective. The detective agreed to release the information to them. But now we're at a little bit of a stopgap. Is the detective on vacation this week?
I'm not really sure. I know that you can't get a hold of her Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So I think maybe Monday would probably be the best option to get a hold of her again.
Okay. Yeah, you might want to follow up and just see if I mean, I'll get you the contact information for them. We really need her to contact them directly and then hopefully provide them with those details. And outside of them trying to determine if the phone was turned off or destroyed, they can also look at the tower information for other potential spots that they should be searching. They have what are they called? Drones that can be used for searching smaller areas as well. So Dennis and Tammy, if you guys happen to see this, just know, yes, I think, Alexis, I think I could speak for you where I'm saying we want the help, right? We want more people to check.
Absolutely. Anybody that's willing to help, please feel free to reach out.
Okay.
I have absolutely no problem with anybody. And especially, I mean, all the people that, oh, we're praying for you. That, I mean, it might not seem like a lot, but that's the stuff that gets you through day to day is knowing that, you know, a complete stranger took time out of their day to sit there and say a little prayer for you, you know? Yeah. Somebody that doesn't know you from a can of paint sat there and said, oh, that's so sad. Let me say a little prayer. That's, I mean, it matters in these situations, and you never thought it would. You never really, when you're doing stuff like that, you don't think of the impact, you know, and it does. It matters to us.
I'm just getting chills because you didn't happen to watch my video this week on thoughts and prayers, did you?
No, I haven't yet.
You make a very interesting point that I didn't quite cover in that video, and it's really good to hear it from someone that needs thoughts and prayers right now, that they appreciate that. So very, very cool. While I'm at it, let me just say for Team Water Sonar, they do all their work for free, and I have donated to them before. On behalf of my Patreon and PayPal supporters, we are going to donate to them again today so they can help, hopefully with this case, but with whatever case they deem is worthy of their time. Dennis and Tammy, we really appreciate you guys out there. Also, you opened a GoFundMe for this case.
Yeah. After I saw that, I didn't think people would be interested in helping us out, but the GoFundMe's, it's going to help us. First off, we got to figure out what to do with all my dad's stuff and get some storage going for that. I'd love to get a drone, get somebody to let us use their drone, or even get somebody to get us up in the air somehow, you know? I mean, we'll see who donates. I've seen a lot of people already have started, and it's truly appreciated. I never even thought that people would be interested in that.
Yeah, and we know posters aren't free either. You got to get copies made for all the posters you're putting up all over the place as well. So once again, on behalf of my Patreon supporters and my PayPal supporters, we are going to make a donation to the GoFundMe for your father's case as well.
Thank you so much. That's very, very sweet. I mean, the interview was enough, but thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate being able to do that, and it's because of the amazing people that I have watching this channel that I can do that kind of stuff. So wherever I can, I do try to help.
Thank you to all viewers.
Anything else that you want to say? Any other recent developments, new info, anything that we might have missed in any of this?
Really, I really can only ask for anybody just to share, go to his Facebook page, share his Facebook page, any large-scale media, even if it's just a picture, you know, and saying, hey, this guy's missing. If you see him, call the police, you know. And that it would really, I feel like just because he has been on a couple news stations in the local area, but if he's not local anymore, nobody would know that he's missing. So really just any sharing and getting his picture out there, that's all we want. And I mean, until we hear anything more, that's all we really can do is try and get as many eyes looking. And until we have a kind of a jumping off point, we're just kind of at a standstill. We just want to get his face out there as much as we can. Yeah.
Now, I know you tried to show us, but the camera didn't quite catch it right. Can you show us the picture again? And I'll tell you to move it a little bit to your right and as high as you can get it. This is a picture we haven't seen yet. Keep going to your right. There you go. Pull it back a little bit. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. And when was this?
This was just this past Easter.
Oh, okay. That's a great picture. He has a really infectious smile. Looks like you've got it as well.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely. I take on a lot of my dad's traits, and my brother takes on a lot of my mom's.
Excellent. Anything else that you want to say to the Brainscratch audience? Anyone that's watching this before we close this out?
I did want to. We have a dear friend, Angelina, and she's the one who actually brought you to our attention. I know she has messaged you a couple of times, so I just want her to know. I mean, and everybody, thank you so much, but especially her. I mean, she's a sweetheart, and we really appreciate her help. We appreciate everybody's help. We appreciate all the love, especially you taking the time to do these videos. I mean, it's an awful time in our life, but it helps to be surrounded by good people. You know, it helps, especially with everything going on in the world. Let's remember that we're all people. Let's remember that, you know, at the end of the day, everybody has a dad. Everybody has a daughter. Everybody can relate to this. So, yeah. I mean, just thank you so much. And anything, anybody share the Facebook, share this video, whatever. And I mean, I couldn't be more grateful for that. That's all right. I mean, that's all I have.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time for this. And I think you've got classes tonight still, right? So I've got to let you go.
Criminal law here at 6:00. So I'm going to head right back out to school.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Alexis. Once again, our hearts are with you, and everyone is hoping and praying that Kelvin gets to come home soon. And thank you so much for your time. That is it for this episode of Brainscratch Searchlight, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here. I'm really touched by this story. I will keep up to date with Team Water Sonar. If there are any developments around any of that going on, I will certainly let you guys know about it. I hope you might also consider donating to both Team Water Sonar and the GoFundMe for Kelvin. I'll have links to both of those in the description box below. So thank you so much for your time. Have a great day, and I'll see you back here tomorrow on the Lord and Arts channel.